Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Pathways and Possibilities, where we explore the intersection of education, technology, equity, and purpose. Over the last three episodes, we've laid an important foundation. We discovered that you were created on purpose. We learned that work was God's idea. And last week, we talked about how your purpose is bigger than your career. So here's where that leaves us. If your purpose isn't your job title and it isn't something you have to go find like a lost set of keys, then what is it made of? What are the actual pieces? Today, we start answering that with a question every teenager actually asks, even if they never say it out loud. What am I actually good at? Or maybe, do I even have a gift? If you ever wonder that, today's episode is for you. So, before we go further, I want to give you a different way to picture this whole search. Most of us were taught to think about our future as a decision. Pick a major, pick a career, get it right the first time, or you end up feeling like you've fallen behind. But in my own research, I found something different happening in the students who seemed the most at peace with an uncertain future. They weren't the ones who had already decided everything. They were the ones who had learned how to find their way. Noticing clues, trying things, paying attention to what keeps showing up in their own lives, not deciding. And this is what I call wayfinding. Now, think about the difference. A decision is something you make once, something at a fork in the road, and then you leave with it. Wayfinding is something you do continuously. You look at what's around you, you take a step, and the next landmark comes into view. Discovering your gift works the same way. You're not going to arrive at one perfect answer today. You're going to notice a landmark, and that's enough to take you to the next step. And you're trying to get to that next step. Now, let me paint a picture. So, imagine two students walking into a school. The first student has an amazing ability to explain different ideas so clearly that everyone understands. Classmates naturally ask them for help before a test. Now, the second student walks into the same classroom and somehow makes everyone feel comfortable. New students sit beside them, friends trust them, teachers notice that people simply feel welcome around them. Neither student learned those abilities from a textbook. Neither received a certificate saying they had those abilities. Yet, both have something valuable. The Bible calls these gifts. Now, the challenge is that many people spend years comparing themselves to others instead of recognizing what God has already placed inside them. So, what exactly is a gift? This is what teens want to know. I define a gift this way. A gift is it's a God-given ability or capacity or inclination that enables you to contribute to the lives of others. Now, I want you to notice something important. A gift isn't something you earn, it's something you receive. Now, Listen to what Paul writes in Romans 12:6. We have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. Now, I love that verse because it reminds us that God intentionally made people different, different gifts, different personalities, different experiences, different ways of serving. Think about the world for a moment and not all the craziness that's going on, especially in our political climate. But imagine if everyone loved math, then who would create music? And I love music, right? Imagine if everyone wanted to lead. Who would quietly encourage people behind the scenes? Because when you have leaders, there's someone in the back that encouraged that person, that supports that person. Or imagine if everyone wanted to build houses, then who would be the doctors, the teachers, the artists, hey, the software developers? Um, God didn't make everyone the same because the world needs different kinds of contributors. Now, sometimes we look at someone who's really talented and think, I wish I were like them. Like for me, I really wish I could sing really, really good. But that's the wrong comparison. Think about a toolbox. A hammer isn't better than a screwdriver. A screwdriver isn't better than a measuring tape. Each tool has a different purpose. And the same is true for us. Your gift isn't meant to make you more important than someone else. It's meant to help you serve someone else. The author Peter writes it this way in 1 Peter 4:10. Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others. Now, did you hear that? To serve others, not to become famous, not to collect trophies, not to impress people. Now, while all of those things sometimes are nice, that's not what it says. Your gift is God's way of blessing someone else's life through you. And I know that seems weird because we always want things to be about ourselves. As I've worked with young people over the years, I've noticed three myths that keep showing up. Now, number one, only extraordinary people have gifts. Some teenagers think, I'm not famous. I don't sing. I'm not an athlete. I don't have a huge social media following. So I guess I don't have a gift. The Bible never says that, okay? And so that is you saying that. God never said that. I want you to understand this. Leadership can be a gift. Organization can be a gift. Listening can be a gift. Encouragement, problem solving can be a gift. Hospitality can be a gift. Now, some gifts are very visible. Others quietly change lives every single day. God values them all. Now, myth number two is if I had a gift, I would already know it. Actually, that's not always true as well. And so I want you to think about Moses. When God called him to lead Israel, Moses didn't think he could do it. Jeremiah believed he was too young. Gideon thought he was the weakest person in his family. Again and again throughout scripture, God saw gifts in people before they saw them in themselves. Sometimes other people recognize our gifts before we do. Now, myth number three, I only have one gift. God often combines gifts in beautiful ways. For instance, a teacher might also be an encourager. And so being a teacher and an encourager are both gifts. An entrepreneur might also be a visionary leader. Think about a designer. A designer may also have a gift of hospitality and make people feel seen. So I want you to understand that you're wonderfully complex because design because God designed you that way. And only God could do such a thing. People often use the word gifts, talent, skills, and interests as if they means the same thing. And they don't. And next week, we're going to dig into this a lot deeper, especially the difference between a gift, a skill, and a calling. But here's the short version for now. A gift is something that God places inside you that helps you serve others. A talent is a natural ability that often shows up early in life. And then you have a skill, which is something you develop through practice. You weren't born knowing how to, like for me, I wasn't born to know how to write code, or people were not born to play a piano. Those improve with learning. And so an interest is simply something you enjoy. So if you're like me and you love technology, technology isn't necessarily my gift. It's my interest. And your gift may be teaching technology or leading a technology team. Creating technology solutions is something that I do, right? Or maybe you are someone who um, helps people solve problems through technology. The interest, right? My interest in technology provides the environment to allow my gift to thrive. And the gift determines how I contribute. Okay. And so let me just kind of give you a story to kind of help you, because that was a mouthful. So I want you to kind of just picture this, close your eyes. So I want to tell you about a workshop I ran once because it stayed with me for years. I gave a group of students a challenge and I asked them to imagine that they had money to start any business they wanted. I didn't give them any constraints. Whatever you can envision, you have an unlimited amount of financial resources. And so I want you to, think of a business. You're going to start the business. But there was a catch to this. Anytime someone's giving you a lot of money, what's the catch? Okay, so to actually run that business, you needed an online presence, a website, a logo, something people can see. And so one student in the room loved to draw. And he had been drawing for a long period of time, probably as long as he can remember, if I recall him talking about sketching as a kid. Not because teachers had assigned it, but because it was something that uh, he enjoyed doing, right? Now, another student, when it came time to build their online presence, made a flyer. And it wasn't just decent, it was good. I was impressed. She had a real eye for layout, for color, for what makes something look like it belongs on a screen. Now, neither of them had ever been told they had a gift. Both of them lived in a neighborhood where nobody had ever handed them a camera or, outside of a phone, like a, camera, a professional camera. Never, they had been involved in a design class or even, understood what graphic design was. The talent was just there. The exposure wasn't. Now that part still breaks my heart a little, honestly, because, a gift doesn't stop being real just because nobody points it out, right? And so just because nobody pointed a spotlight at it, it's there. But here's the part of that story that I actually find hopeful. That workshop, it didn't turn every student in the room into an entrepreneur by the end of the afternoon. That's not what happened. What happened was quite the opposite. And it was much subtle than, making sure that everyone, you just assuming that everyone's going to be these entrepreneur. The student left with direction, motivation, right? And so a future that suddenly felt imaginable in a way it hadn't an hour before. And so, which is gratifying to me and I hope was enlightening for them. Sometimes discovering a gift doesn't hand you an answer, right? It hands you a next step. And that's what wayfinding looks like up close. And so, and that's part of my continuous, journey in this research, So even though I'm finished with the PhD, this is still a continuous research. And so let's bring this back to, this a biblical perspective. One of my favorite stories Jesus tells is the parables of the talents. A master gives three students, I mean, I'm talking about students, three servants, different amounts. One receives five, another receives two, another receives one. Now, I want you to notice something. The master never compares them. He doesn't ask, why weren't you more like the first servant? Instead, he asks a different question. What did you do with what I gave you? Now that's a powerful, powerful lesson. God isn't asking you to become someone else. He's asking you to develop what he's already entrusted to you. Don't hide your gift. Don't ignore it. Don't spread your life wishing you had something else. Use the one God gave you. So, how do you begin recognizing your gifts? Right. And I'm for sure that's the question that you've asked. And I'm going to kind of give you five clues. First, it feels natural. You may still need practice, but certain things come more easily to you than they do others. Second, people benefit from it. Your gift makes someone else's life better. The third clue, other people notice it. And this is why I'm always asking my kids to, part of their reflection process is to have other people, and not to say that there could be some bias in people giving you opinion, but you need to find someone you trust to kind of look at you and say, hey, what do you see in me? Or what do you, especially parents are able to tell kids that, like, what do you see this reoccurring thing in me that I haven't noticed, right? And so other people can notice something that you have not noticed. I mean, like, have you ever like had different people, and it may not just be your parent, tell you the same thing about yourself? And so these are the things that I tell my teens to pay attention to. Fourth, it gives you energy. Even when it's challenging, you enjoy doing it. And then finally, opportunities keep appearing. Doors continue to kind of open in that area. Now, I want to be honest about the last one because of the two students I just told you about. Sometimes opportunities don't keep appearing, not because your gift isn't real, but because nobody's opened that door for you yet. And so a lot of times it could be that the lack of resource or the lack of attention around you. That's not a verdict on your gift. That's a call for someone, a parent, a teacher, a mentor, to go build the door. And one clue by itself doesn't prove you found a gift. But when several of those clues kind of come together, it's worth paying attention. And I want to say, like, if you are a parent or a teacher or a mentor, um, you know, these, and you need to be paying attention and you need to be uplifting these teens around you. If you're a parent, a youth leader, or a teacher walking through this with a teenager, let me just quickly speak directly to you for a moment. In my research, I ended up with a term for the role I think you're meant to play here. I call it bounded mediation. It means your job isn't to decide what a young person gift is and hand it to them like a verdict. It's to open doors, to put things in front of them they've never have seen otherwise, a class, a tool, a conversation, an experience, and then get out of the way while they kind of figure out what it means for them. And I struggle with this one with my son. And so hear me when I say this here is for the adults that's listening. You don't have to have the answer. You just have to help build a room where the gift gets to show up. That's what our teens need. And I want to leave you with one final picture. Imagine someone hands you an apple seed. Would you expect that tiny seed to become a tree overnight? Of course not. It has to be planted, watered, protected, and then given time to grow. Your gift works the same way. God gives the seed. You help cultivate it. Teaching improves through experience. Leadership kind of grows through patience. Creativity becomes stronger through learning. And so your gift is God's beginning. Growth, that's your responsibility. So don't become discouraged if you aren't an expert yet. Remember, you're still growing. I'll tell you honestly why I care about this so much. My son struggled in a traditional classroom, not because he wasn't capable, but because he couldn't connect with what he was learning to who he was becoming. I started homeschooling and then something shifted. He started to thrive. And when I talked to other parents, I found out he wasn't alone. A lot of teens can tell you that what they're learning, but not why it matters to the person they're going to become. Now, that gap is what sent me back to school to study this for real. And so when I ask you about reflecting questions, I'm not asking as a host. I'm asking as someone who watched what happens when a kid finally gets the chance to kind of connect the dots. And so this week, I like you to spend a little time thinking about these questions. What do people consistently thank you for? So I want you to write that down. What do you enjoy doing even when no one asks you to do? And this is one I have been using from the beginning of time when I'm talking to people and honestly adults as they try to navigate what what should they be doing. And then lastly, when do you feel like you're making a positive difference in someone else's life? Now, write down whatever comes to mind. You don't have to discover every gift today. You just have to begin paying attention to the next landmark. You're trying to get to the next step. And so, like I do in other episodes, I like to kind of end this with a prayer. And so, if you allow me to pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for creating each of us uniquely. Thank you for giving every person gifts that can make a difference in the lives of others. Help us stop comparing ourselves with others. Instead, help us recognize the unique abilities you've placed within us. Give us the courage to develop these gifts, to use them faithfully, and to serve others with humility and love. Lord, teach us to trust that you know exactly how you designed us. And it remind us that every gift matters in your kingdom. I ask all these things in Jesus Christ's name. Amen. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Pathways and Possibilities. If today's conversation encouraged you, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a teenager, a parent, teacher, or mentor, or anyone who's working with teens. Next week, we'll answer another important question. What's the difference between a gift, a talent, a skill, and a calling? Understanding those differences may completely change the way you think about your future. Until next time, remember, You don't have to become someone else to live a life of purpose. God has already placed something valuable inside of you, and your job is to discover it, develop it, and use it to serve others. I'm Dr. Salena Burke, and this has been Pathways and Possibilities.